Welcome to Next Matters Most. I'm here with Madilynn A. Beck. Welcome to the show, Madilynn.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And what do you prefer? Do you prefer Madilynn, or do you ever shorten it to Maddie or anything? Okay, cool.
My mom shortens it to Maddie, and generally that's, when she wants something or when I'm in trouble. So let's just stick to Madilynn.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've got 3 kids, and I feel like that was always something where it's like you use the middle name, but I'm like, I haven't really done that. I guess I don't have a way to like signal that I'm more upset other than I just yell and they end up in that room.
You break it up. Yeah, you break it all down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So your LinkedIn profile is awesome, by the way. So I'll obviously post that. And I don't know how to use that little intro video, but you use it really effectively.
Thank you.
When did you start doing that?
I'm in like 9,000 entrepreneurial groups, and someone talked about the importance of having a video intro, and they did it. And I was like, let me just Google it and figure it out.
Damn. Well done. Yeah. So this is going to be a first for me, which is I just connected with you on the internet because I saw some content around a podcast you made and was like, hey, we should connect and talk. And we're both out there trying to share our wisdom and knowledge and get other people to do the same for the benefit of others, whether it's good, great, or indifferent. At least it's out there, and people can do with it as they wish. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I've been kind of just going, building this out with my own network and saying, hey, I've worked with this interesting person and that interesting person. And it'd be cool if, all these convos that you and I have had in the past were like now on the internet and up for others to share, or, in iTunes or whatever. Cause I'm a big believer in sort of like, experience sharing and just kind of, hearing about others' journey. And a lot of times you hear the story, it's like the end, right? Like, oh, they just got this big thing and here's how it all worked out. And that's always like
overnight success.
Yeah. That's like from E to F or like Y to Z. What about A to B? Like day one, all that stuff. And so that was my main goal and purpose with this, was just like, let's talk and share. And I haven't put a lot of how do I get outside of my network, outside of my comfort zone, and start to even think about maybe even promotional reasons, right? Like you're a content creator, you're an influencer, so I should talk to you, and now you'll maybe have a good time and invite me on your show. And we're just now meeting for the first time, which is very awesome. And I love new people, and I love people in general, even during COVID when it all has to be kind of video based, but that's slowly changing. So, I mean, Madilynn, you're a content creator, and I'm going to was using your LinkedIn thing because it gives a great example, story of what you're doing. CEO of a business, you're a psychotherapist, you are in a million entrepreneur groups, like you just said, or maybe 9,000, maybe 8,900. So you obviously support others. You talked about your purpose, and your intrinsic why is helping uplift all, and thinking about kind of equity and I guess the world, but also the world of business and entrepreneurship. So I hopefully I didn't just steal your whole bio, but maybe give me sort of your kind of couple-minute version of what you're doing and where your kind of energy is focused these days, and we'll go from there.
That was a great summation. I'm glad it's actually working. That means that means that the bio is succinct. But that's pretty much it. I'm really, over the past few years, I'd probably say right before I had my first little human. So about 7 to 8 years ago, I really was driven by what is my purpose? Why am I here? And it was just interesting. It was interesting to even think about that question. I feel like once you kind of trickle out of your 20s, you start realizing like, I'm not immortal. I have to think about like how I'm going to affect the greater good and the universe as a whole. So I did a lot of work on that. And I came up with, like you said, my intrinsic why, which is access and equity in any and all forms. So I am a psychotherapist. That is my bread and butter. And that allows me to fuel my 2 companies. So I'm a founder and CEO of a lifestyle tech company. So basically lifestyle tech on demand called Foundful. Just think of like DoorDash, but for everything within hospitality, entertainment, and health and beauty. And my baby, not a human baby, but my business baby, one that I've been working on for the longest, is called The Better Spot. And The Better Spot is a holistic wellness marketplace for flex lease and shared space for holistic practitioners. So it's like the WeWork of the wellness world. And I've been working on that for so long. And when COVID went down, it was just like there was a huge spotlight on the need for that. Health has always been an issue. It is a world issue in all of its forms in any way, whether it's mental health, physical health, energetic or spiritual health. It's always a thing. We're always working on it. But, just like with many cultures, it doesn't matter until it's trending. And it has been trending a lot over the past few years. So now everyone wants to know about it and wants to get into it. So I think it's the perfect time to ramp it up.
That's great. And then where does your kind of podcast fit into all that? Is that kind of an offshoot of one or many, or just sort of your kind of megaphone for all of the above?
It's a megaphone for all of the above. The podcast was a really funny thing. So in my first life, I was an actor. I went to NYU and got my BFA in drama from Tisch. And so just kind of like being a charismatic presence and being in front of people is like second nature to me. But I constantly get into these forums, these entrepreneurial groups, Slack channels, Facebook groups, accelerators, all the different things that I constantly find myself in. And the podcast is called Fundraising While Black. And that was a really strong through line. Experiences, were not the same. There would be people within a forum that would be like, yeah, I just started my company and I got a $2 million friends and family round. And then there'd be people like, you got what from who? Wait, huh? How does that work? And so I always try to like go out to people and be like, okay, well, that was one experience. Let me talk to others. And the more and more folks that I started talking to, the more conversations I found myself in, it was resounding that the experiences were very different for POCs, people of color, in getting off the ground. And also the assumption that every entrepreneur wants to be a unicorn. Right? That every entrepreneur wants venture capital. It's like, no, some of us just want to have a strong business and support our family and our community. So
that's right. Yeah, I had an interesting convo in the drive into work today, which I don't drive to work every day, and no one actually else is here except me. So it's sort of
that's awesome.
Different than I guess that used to be that statement, but around how like lifestyle businesses that just make cash flow are actually way undervalued. And so that's actually where there's an interesting market opportunity. Because everyone just wants growth and upside. And it's like, well, damn, I mean, there's probably good businesses out there that you could either start or grow or buy or invest into. And ironically, the ones that are the best deals are the ones that make money, which is funny and considered lifestyle. But I've never struggled because I don't really give a shit what other people think. But like with the whole like, oh, that's a lifestyle business, versus what like a startup, like if are you working hard and are you your own boss and are you paying people's payroll and are you making money? Yes. Like what else is that? Like, so this is a lifestyle business and you're a startup because you're working for 5 years on your pitch deck and you've never done anything. Like, come on.
Right.
So, but I do understand like, yeah, one can maybe go up into the right, like hockey stick, rocket ship, while others will just kind of plug along. And I've kind of lived, sort of through both of those, and there's goods and bads with both, obviously. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's funny because Monday, this is Wednesday. Well, no shit, today's Thursday. Monday morning, I was coming into work again. I guess, why am I going to work all the time? I should be working remote like everybody else. But I was actually trying to put myself in my own shoes when I was like in college or in my early 20s. Like, why was I always trying to start companies? Like, what did I actually want? And I think, and I've seen some of your other content. I think you were holding like a workshop or like a mastermind group or something. And I was like, oh shit, I need to join it. Because I'm like actually rediscovering like the need for like an intrinsic why, or I just stole that from you. But like, I feel like I've had that before. I mean, I've worked in groups and I've kind of gotten the coaching and peer groups and all that where, you really think about purpose and fulfillment and like holistic kind of well-being. I talk about well-being all the time. Through this book I read called Flourish. I don't know if you've read that.
I haven't.
Dr. Art Seligman. He was I'm
gonna make a note.
He was the head of the American Psychology Association, and his original big thought leadership was the power of positive thinking, positive psychology. And then he ended up doing contracts with all kinds of different groups around positive thinking. But like this latest, it's not the latest work, it was still early 2000s, I think, but was on well-being. Then it's just about like the whole self, right? So it's like the pursuit of happiness, or like people's purpose is like to be happy, or what it's like these old theories of like what drives people and makes them happy are just like outdated into like kind of like mono, just like they're one-sided. and this is about kind of the whole pie of oneself, right? And so, kind of that holistic thinking. But basically, so I've kind of, I feel like I've done the work on myself previously, but I don't know what's changed. I don't know if it's like school is back in session and now we're like went from like living at home and thinking about like, damn, how do we get more enrichment here to like, now we're back to the grind of like, we're sort of driving to school every day for drop off, pick up, soccer practice, back that like, and no one's in the office, like, but I drive to work, we're all remote. Like what, I don't know if there's an inciting event like that just happened. Or if I just like the other things expired and I need a new one, right? Like, or if they've changed or evolved. But I was thinking, I was like, why did I start the company? Is it like free time? Oh, and because that was Monday. Tuesday, I was sitting there catching up with a guy, colleague, friend, and we were going to like play golf 9 holes. I was like, oh, I'm going to get that in. It was a beautiful day, fall day, like, but nice weather. And then like in time to get home, pick up my son and take him to his soccer practice. I was like, oh, this is perfect. I was like, but I just was not happy. I was like, I should be doing something else, or I don't have time for this. But I was like, what do I have time for? I was like, I don't even know what I would do. Like, if there's always work to do, I should want to do this. I made myself go, and like, we both begrudgingly had fun. He's in the middle of like a transaction. So he's kind of like on the phone and stuff, but we're like, we got to do this more. Like, why else are we doing this? I don't know, and I honestly don't know. I still don't know. Cause I that didn't even answer it for me. It wasn't like, oh yeah, that's why I'm doing it. So I could like have leisure during the day and like pick up kids and have
it didn't fill your cup.
No, hell no. Yeah. So I was just like, why was it? Yeah. Was it just sort of like, did I just want to be like rich or something? Like that's a long work in progress. Or like, was I doing it for just some reason that just kind of went away? Or was it just the free time or feeling? I mean, when you're really young, you're like, man, if you're like, man, I've got money and free time and I'm my own boss, it feels like you got left home alone, right? You're like, oh, shit, I can do anything. So I feel like that just drives you for so long. And then you have terrible jobs or terrible bosses, or I've never had a terrible job or a terrible boss, but I always just wanted more. Well, I mean, they were terrible in that like they would make me show up at a certain time a lot of times, or like get frowned upon. And like, I was really never rewarded for like my performance, it was kind of more like, oh, okay, the company did this, you get like a 1% raise. You're like, oh my gosh. Or I didn't feel like I was rewarded enough or valued enough. But I didn't blame them.
But it wasn't a toxic environment or anything like that.
No, they were mostly good deals and good people to be around. But it just was like, I was like, man, this is not, it's so big. At one case, it was like so big that like, how could they ever know? They have to have systems and formulas. And if my boss is like sort of, like less advanced than I am, of course he's going to grade me like down, and my bonus or raise won't be as what it should be. Or in other cases, like, why aren't they focusing on retaining, me versus someone else? And like, we all got 5% raises, even though it was a tough market. I knew it, but I was like, I'm, way outperformed everybody else. Like little stuff like that, where I was just like having to be at a certain place at a certain time, like kind of like locked to your desk, like locked to certain activity goals, not outcome goals. And then not just seeing like that very direct feedback of like, do this action, be successful, also be rewarded with a job. It's usually with money and title or whatever, and not seeing that happen as fast as I wanted to. Also, that's being sort of immature too. But the point is, they weren't bad experiences, but like, compared to that, it was like, oh, I want to have that freedom or whatever. But now I guess I've just been living the freedom life for so long that I'm like, okay, what's that next step? And
what else is there?
Yeah, what else is there? And what's exciting? And some things, there's just different. I don't want to talk this whole time because I asked you on here. I want you to talk the whole time. But anyway, but your thing that you're working on, and that it didn't even like, I don't even know. It wasn't even like the fill your cup or intrinsic why. I don't know if I was like questioning that. I think I was just like I've just been in a cloud of unhappiness for like a few months, but when school started, just kidding. But honestly, that's all I'm going to say is before school started, we were living in enough of that COVID world where it was kind of like you had this, everyone was at home. We could like rethink kind of all the things and, lots of things are on the table. And then we kind of just got jammed right back into this old structure, but that
wasn't working to begin with.
It wasn't really working to begin with. And I don't know if there's the benefit to that anymore. And I'm kind of questioning that. And it's impacting. The other last thing I'll say is on the way here, I just talk to people and I just say whatever. So like, I kind of like, it's more important that it's like, I learned through that, right? Like sort of that, it's catharticism or whatever, where I'm saying that to them. It's kind of like, oh, I'm reflecting as I'm talking about that. But what I was saying was, I don't know if I'm stepping over $1 to pick up a dime, right? Like, am I actually now focused on the wrong thing? Like, oh God, how do I wish I was walking my kids to school, not doing that. And I'm like, what about business or savings or financial security? Am I just sort of like neglecting that just because I really focus on this one thing that's just causing a major annoyance in my life, and to where I should need to kind of dumb that one down and focus on bigger things and bigger problems. But,
I mean, when have you given yourself space to really unpack these things? Because every single question that you're asking is super powerful. Every single question that you're asking is like, as you answer them and like micro progression, you're going to get to your purpose, right? You're going to be like, oh, that's the thing. Oh shit, I stumbled upon the thing, right? But if you keep asking the questions and not answering them, then you're just going to, you know, just keep circling around it. So you got to get into it.
Yeah. I see why you're in 9,000 business groups, because they're all like, join our group, Madilynn. Like, you've got all the answers.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I find enough time, but sometimes when I do, it's like, I don't get any outcomes. You know, it's like, oh, I'm going to go bury myself away out of town for like 2 days, and I'm going to come out with like, you know, aha moments. And that just like doesn't happen. I just kind of am more productive and like a little more focused. And it's usually like when you're not expecting it, like I'm driving to a meeting and it's like a little bit longer than normal drive. And I'm like, damn, like what about that? You know, and like kind of have a big, you know, aha moment. But I mean, I'm not never happy. I don't mean that, but like I'm sort of never satisfied. So I'm always questioning things. And that usually leads to consistent evolution. Whether it's improvement or not remains TBD, but you know, always kind of trying to evolve.
But we're also within the system of a culture that is successful because we constantly question everything, right? Our culture is like forcing us to be like, oh, question that. You can always do better. You can always have more. You can always go harder. You can, you know, so it's difficult to kind of fit within that structure and to also feel fulfilled because you're constantly receiving an input that you're not supposed to be.
Yeah. For a while, I want to get back to you, but I keep talking about myself, but this is great. You're so effective. Oh my gosh. You should have a podcast. But that's funny. I didn't do it last year, but like there was at least 4 New Year's in a row where like my number one resolution was like contentment. I was like, I gotta just practice that. Like this is good. This like life is good. And I don't think I made that my goal last year because we were just sort of too busy I mean, or just who knew? It was kind of a weird year. Right. And so yeah, but it's definitely been a problem this year because even I was like, well, what was I content with last year? Like driving home and like Friday at 4 and we'd all play outside and listen to music and like cook out and have drinks or whatever while the kids are playing all, you know, frolicking in the yard. Like, but like, what is that? That's just like a distraction. Like, what's our purpose, man? Like, it's not just to go, or like I joined a golf club like 5 years ago thinking I would like a gym, you know, I'd get in shape, I'd get good, but I'm still terrible. It's embarrassing. But I like
golf is hella hard. I don't even want to.
It is so hard, man. But like at first I was having fun because I was like, oh, this is like leisure, you know, it's like, oh, like you get out there, you bring friends, you bring coworkers. You know, you introduce other people to the game of golf. I was like, oh, I'll go with my wife. Like we'll get like good together and it'll be like a family hobby. I'll bring the kids. But now I'm just like, it's still just like a leisure hobby. And what is that? Just a distraction from other things that you're not happy with or whatever. So, I mean, it's just everything I've sort of turned into this weird kind of like thing that I'm just not sure. I'm just questioning it all. So anyway, so
then eliminate it.
Yeah.
Eliminate it. Get rid of it.
That's right. But I've thought about it. I was like, I should quit golf. But I'm like, but is that the problem? Or is that like, I'm just unable to enjoy sort of leisure because I don't enjoy like my main life or work, or is it because
I think if you shifted the focus to be like, if this isn't filling something for me in whatever capacity, even if it's a distraction, if the goal is to be distracted, right? Is it distracting you in a way that feels good? Is it, you know, plugging a hole? Then if it's not, you don't have to like quit it. Just put it to the side. You can always come back to it. Golf's not gonna go anywhere.
That's right.
You know? So like if you're in this club and you're like, man, it's not hitting like it used to, cool. Move on to the next. I always say like fail fast. Just be like, do it, see if it works.
I endorse that. So let's talk about you. And I mean, I want to like kind of figure out or ask you, inquire and learn about how you map sort of your intrinsic why to the businesses that you're running. Cause they're similar. I mean, they're not the same or similar. Obviously that's kind of a purpose behind the business. So how are those, how do you relate the two, or third, if you count the podcast, which obviously is,
Sure.
probably an amazing storytelling vehicle.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so much fun.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, you got the Better Spot, obviously WellCare, just obviously all wellness things are so important. And, so like you said, now that's on trend. How do you like fulfill your intrinsic why through this awesome business opportunity that you've been, baking for 5 years, and like now it's an overnight, hot market, whatever. How do you kind of, fulfill your like why through the business opportunities?
So, I mean, the why came from just being inundated with patterns. I try not to be too analytical. I tend to find myself doing it. It's just innate within me. I was that obnoxious only child that's also a Gemini. And that's like, well, why? Like, when your kids go through that phase and you're just like, can you please stop? Like, I don't know. Right. I was living that actively as an adult, questioning everything. And I just started seeing a lot of similar experiences in different spaces. So it wasn't like, oh, only in this space are people not gaining equity or access, or only in this, it's across the board. And knowing that I only had the capacity to do so much, I was like, well, what are 2 industries or arenas that I'm really into and motivated by and find fulfillment in? And so lifestyle was definitely one of them. I left New York and came out to LA, and all of my friends are in the industry. So I have tons of folks that are in entertainment, and because I started Fountful smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. Okay. And so like with that one specifically, I was just looking at these companies, these restaurant groups in LA, or advertising groups or entertainment groups, and they're making hand over fist. And then the pandemic happens and the brick and mortar gets shut down. And so then all those people are out of work because they are tied to a physical space. And I was like, that's whack as hell. Like, why? Like, you know what I mean? If people are brilliant mixologists, or if they are unbelievable chefs, or whatever they do within those forums, why are they tied to a space? And then it was the same way with the concept of the Better Spot, obviously well before the pandemic, because I started that concept in 2018 and started kind of building customer discovery with that. But it was the same thing of really phenomenal holistic practitioners that just want to help people, right? That just want to help people outside of the medical industrial complex. Like, hey, I'm not going to give you a drug to treat the symptom. I actually want to get to the root of the problem. And we're going to do that without psychopharmaceuticals or things like that. Whether it be Reiki or yoga or breath work or whatever, those people are also tied to space. And those are the folks where it's like, those are the healers where you want them to have space to do what they need to do so you can be helped. So just realizing that a lot of equity didn't exist in regards to being able to uplift the small businesses, the small business owners, the independent folks, when they're really the ones that are propelling the economy forward. And we're seeing that now, right? Like, obviously, post-COVID world, when folks are like, yeah, sorry, your package is going to take an additional 12 weeks because no one is willing to drive it from A to B, or no one is in the factory working to do it. Where we're really seeing how the power of the contractor, the low wage worker, those folks are really being seen and heard because of what's going down. So looking at the equity and access piece was just seeing those patterns and realizing that I was constantly drawn to them.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
So that's interesting, because I kind of started that question thinking, not really thinking that equity and access were the mission of those businesses, just like, but they kind of are, right? I mean, meaning, when I just think of it, I guess I've thought historically about it differently, which is like, hey, in this business, how do we think about equity and access, and in this industry, investing, how do we think about equity and access? And, you've kind of looked at it in a way, not totally different, but, kind of a slight, like at an angle, which is, I'm actually, there's a lack of equity and access for these types of workers that really have value in the world. And there's, from chef to mixologist to healer, and which also then applies to space. So that's actually very interesting, because you have tied it. I almost was going to say, do you, are any of these distractions, right? Where it's like, oh man, my why is over here, where I'm just talking to people and I'm encouraging them, and I'm sharing my story, and I'm trying to uplift and motivate and also educate, so that there is more thoughtfulness around equity and access. But here are my jobs, here's my businesses, and this is kind of a flex. We work for healers, and we work for well-being people. I wasn't thinking we work for well-being people really was about equity and access. I was thinking like, well, then as you think about staffing and as you think about this, you're thinking about it, but it is actually kind of like that subset of folks is like really kind of doesn't have the same access to stuff, or they just need more, right? They need more access. And interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah. Because I've, all right. Again, back to me, just kidding. Gosh darn it. I need to stop this, man. Like, where's your couch? I got to go sit on it. I'm gonna turn the camera around. I got a couch over there. I'm all by myself. Just like, okay, Madilynn, please. I need healing. That's so funny. But yeah, well, cause I think I'm always like, how do I line those dots up? I'm also trying to think about what actually gets me excited. Is it like the environment, and being like, hey, we have environmental issues. I'm generally like not a Democrat or a liberal, right? So, but I'm like, hey, we've got to kind of find ways to make, people that are maybe conservative or libertarian or whatever, get them lining up to this fact. So meaning it has to appeal to many, right? So how can I maybe take a stand on certain things, knowing my context and knowing that I need to kind of convince a whole shitload of half the country that, this is important. And how do I do that through business and get excited about that? Or something else, right? Like that might make me, kind of much more like having a purpose-driven kind of business, which I think could be fun and maybe like dually fulfilling. Okay. So that's great. So tell me, let's like then focus in on kind of the entities. And did you start becoming a psychotherapist also in COVID?
I became a psychotherapist right before COVID, which was like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was probably 3 months out from being able to legally practice, and then everything shut down.
Well,
and so my thought,
like
my thought was, oh, I'm not going to be able to practice now because of the pandemic. And literally the opposite happened. Like, open my website, open my calendar, and was just, I had so no packed. Time to do anything else. Yeah.
I mean, that's like its whole entire own like arc of story right there, I guess. So, I mean, you obviously have had a career or multiple careers. What drew you to the industry or practice of psychotherapy?
Oh my goodness. So it's interesting. It's the intersection of the human experience and perception, right? So being an actor, and like, I was always an actor. I was always a theater kid. I started doing it when I was hella young, and it would be this transformational experience for people. They would come into the theater, they would watch, whether it be a live stage theater or a movie, and they would go in, they would watch the same thing. Then you go grab some beers after the movie and you talk about it. And so often people would be like, well, what do you want? That's not how I felt it out. Like, it's just people's perspectives were so different. And I started just like really getting into the idea of receiving stories and being a receptacle for storytelling versus being the storyteller. I was fascinated by how people could watch the same thing or sit within the same, event and have polarizing experiences. And so I just started really getting into human behavior and psychoanalysis and emotional functioning and emotional intelligence. I started having conversations and just like independently reading when I was in grad school, like different things where, people would have huge shifts that were based on just perspectives of an event, and the event was documented in a certain way, but then someone else would have an entirely different perspective because of their lived experience. So I just wanted to get in there and actually be, qualified to have these conversations and to help folks out in that way when I just constantly found myself at that intersection.
Jeez. Okay. That's amazing. And you'd started one of the two businesses, The Better Spot, before.
Yeah, before I went to school.
Yeah. Was that, I mean, I guess you were kind of mingling with that field and that market and those kind of providers and experts. Was that sort of, I mean, was that just like your kind of like your tribe? Like, oh man, like because of that theater experience, you're just like, I totally see the value and see the need for this, and kind of had like the vibes with that, those kind of professionals? Or
yeah, well, I mean, like the majority of people in the world, right? I experienced trauma. So many folks experience trauma and they don't want to call it that, but I'm very open about the experience trauma that I had. And from a logistic standpoint, like being completely selfish and narcissistic, I I hated the healing process. I was like, okay, so I have to go see this person over here for this thing. Then I have to drive across town to go see this other person for this thing because my insurance doesn't cover anybody in network around me. And then I have to, and it was miserable. And so I ended up a lot of times, like, while I was in LA, avoiding going to, whether it's a chiropractor for something or a psychotherapist or then my psychiatrist for whatever. Like I just would start canceling stuff because logistically it was just a pain in the ass. And then I started thinking like, wait a minute. So with Target, I could literally go to Target. I could grocery shop. I could buy clothes. I could get diapers and I could TV in one place. Why does that not exist for wellness? Like why? Like it doesn't make any sense. So I started just talking to a lot of my practitioners that were actually serving me. And I was like, would you consider being in a space where it wasn't a practice, where you weren't kind of cannibalizing your own work by being around 15 other people doing the same thing? What if it was 15 other people that did things entirely different and then you could refer clients to each other? And they were like, that sounds great. Don't know where that is, but I would do that.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. So that's amazing. And I need that too. I feel like my experience with like holistic functional medicine doctor, which I really like. I like the kind of blend of sort of art and science there, like we do blood work every quarter, all kinds of like tests and hormones and everything. And also we do like injectables sometimes and all kind of supplements but there's also sort of the overall kind of picture that we really look at, and we think about other types of medicine, Eastern kind of stuff and whatever. It's all good. But like, damn, man, like I'm going everywhere. And I've actually, that's my biggest complaint that I've told them is like, I can't sustain how many fucking appointments I have, the lists of supplements, the like people are like doing this. I was like, I don't have time for that. Like, I didn't know that this was a 10 to 15 hour a week job just to like pay for like healthcare, whatever. And it's gotten, it's tamped down a little bit, but someone's like, you got to ramp up with this person for the first while for like 4 times a week or 3. You're like, what? Like,
and you're going to end up just like, they're just going to end up falling off because you're going to be like, I don't have the capacity to do it.
That's right. And so, and I know for a fact that there's been a really big, well, this too, like big surge in, I guess, these developers. I'm not sure who ultimately capitalizes on it by kind of stacking, things on top of each other. So kind of the primary care to ortho to this to that to that, kind of in the general and like the, I guess like a generic like healthcare or like original or old school healthcare world where they'd be like, oh, well, why not have a dentist there? So you kind of just whip out your card and insurance, but like this person can, and specialists, right? So traditional maybe medicine. I'm not sure what the word is, but and I don't know who's putting that together and who's ultimately benefiting, but it's definitely good for. I know it's good for the real estate developers, meaning because they're like, oh, I can easily sell this system, and if I kind of stack them like this, then it's gonna be easy to get the rest. Tenants will come, they'll be happy. I can charge a premium maybe and sell this like to a big private equity fund down the road. But I know it's also good for consumers if and when you can just randomly find them. So it sounds like this is kind of along with that trend. So, okay, yay, this is like what I love talking about.
Except it's flex lease.
Yeah.
So it's flex lease, which is the most exciting thing for small business practitioners, right? So when you're talking about like a doctor or a dentist, they have the revenue to be like, oh, you want me to sign a 5-year lease at X amount of, like they can do that, right? Whereas someone who's just starting acupuncture and just got out of the Universal School of Chinese Medicine in East LA, can barely pay their car note and their rent, but they don't want to practice in their living room. So they're looking for spaces of like, where can I do this thing, build a clientele, see if there's even a product market fit, see if I'm even good at what I do, right? It's like, hey, go to the better spot. You can rent a room for, $250 a week, check it out, see if it works. And if so, sign up for a full-time membership.
That's right.
So that model is very different than like the traditional, here's a long-term lease, here's this big, corporate commercial kind of structure and system. And
but the idea of like bringing together the providers that have complementary offerings so that people can kind of, so that it like grows the pie. It's a rising tide kind of thing with all ships, because more people are going to come there when more people know that it's actually more convenient.
Exactly.
And it's like, damn, that's amazing. So let's talk about this entity. How's it going? It's and where are you at now? When are you coming to Durham? That's where I'm at. And I've got to build it. I just told you I have a building that's empty. Like I want all this here. Also, selfishly, so I can go just be like, hey, I'm at the office. What are you doing? I'm like, oh,
I was under contract in Charlotte.
Really?
So that, yeah. So I was under contract in Charlotte. My husband was out there working for a bit. We were never able to close the contract because we just couldn't find terms. And so we ended up hopping back over to LA and coming back to LA. And then I was in contract again in November of 2019. And then the pandemic happened and we were shut down in February. So our contract was dissolved.
Okay. And what does a contract like? Does that mean like you take on a lease and then you kind of chop it up like a WeWork?
Yep. So the contract that I had actually with a developer that was in East LA, it was amazing. He was just like, I love what you're doing. I think it's great. He's like, I own a couple of buildings. Look at my portfolio, see which one you want, and then we can do a revenue share. And I was like, boom,
Yep.
This is amazing. It's perfect.
How much space do you need?
8,000 square feet. 8,000 square feet is going to be our starter. The goal is to get up to 22,000 just because of the scope. It's like I've had architect renderings that are so beautiful that I daydream about and drool over. But for the purposes of like starting off capital, I know I'm going to need something smaller just to give me
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, we've got. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's. We've got. Anyway, my building is 16,000 square feet, and 1,800 of it is a corner, and it's a restaurant. So there's still 14 and change that is sort of mostly spoken for, kind of, but not really. I mean, it's very flexible, right? So we're trying to do kind of a co-working space. Nice. We're in a hub zone and an opportunity zone. So we're kind of trying to educate businesses on, certain advantages of kind of at least getting an address here. And, we've got kind of an OG kind of tech co-working space that we were in and are around when it was just like offices, but now they've kind of done the more like, hey, office flex space. But outside of that, there's no non-tech kind of co-working. So we're kind of thinking of, you can be tech worker or freelancer. I mean, it's like all good, but not just, they're very tech heavy. But then we have like WeWork and Industrious, which are pretty like corporate. So kind of like, I see co-working as sort of like a local brewery or a restaurant, which is sort of like, you're kind of probably skip over the kind of big commercial one and find a local one if you like the vibe and like the location. We've got on-site parking. But I mean, there's also 4,000 square feet of like event space that we had set up as an event business right before the pandemic, actually. So that's a little bit slow. We could have just had our sidewalk and done just as well. Like, it's an event sidewalk. That's all we needed because no one was going inside. Like, an event sidewalk and a nice porta potty, like those nice ones. You've seen those, they drop them off on a trailer and it like looks like a little house.
Yep.
It's like I wish it
has the LED lights on the inside. I've seen that.
Yeah. Like people go and like take photos of themselves in this like amazing portable bathroom.
Selfie porta potty.
That's right. It's real. But and then we've got like another 2,000 that's sort of weird. It's like month to month with somebody, but it can all combine, right? So they're all kind of, it's divided, but my half is 8,000. Then there's the 4,000 of the event space. So anyway, there's definitely room if there's any sort of size of pilot or prototype or even collaboration with sort of kind of a community focused like co-working space, we can figure that out. But I do like, I mean, and there's more. Ultimately, I think there's the best opportunity, what I think would be was a developer that's going to have a lot of space. And this is what I face too. I have enough to be like, I can wheel and deal and be like, oh, I rent this out. I kind of get this for cheap and I can make this into a business and do some co-work. Like, but it's not enough to where I'm like, ooh, I want to invest into an amenity that's going to then make all these other tenants come and get my ROI that way. Right. So if I just did the rev share on yours and it was all 12,000 or 14,000, it would have to be enough, right, for all of us. And that might be too much. Whereas, if I had 3 more stories, and whatever that would be, 48,000. And I'd be like, here, you take 8 because you're going to be a draw for the rest of that will go so fast.
Right.
And shit is expensive these days. So I don't hold your breath for me to go get the next 50,000 square feet.
Right.
But someone out there will, and I think that's a great deal, but feel free, definitely let's talk about if you guys are back.
Yeah.
It's weird. That's crazy. Or Charlotte, you're right. Kind of, it's a couple hours down the road.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And also, I mean, well, side note, I do actually have a project I'm working on in Sanford, which is 30 to 40 minutes south of Raleigh. So, I mean, that could be another, if you come to this area or you're expanding this area, that could be a prototype type spot because that, unlike here, is way more affordable there. So, we could take kind of a risk on like, let's just see if people make this a destination, and we'll drive the 30 minutes because everything is 30 minutes. I mean, you live in LA, right?
Yeah.
Like an hour away.
Everything's an hour.
Yeah. So that's like 35 minutes. Like, oh damn, like, so what? Right. And I think there's a lot of suburban sort of sprawl that's going that way because people like, they'd rather live in a small town than just like a odd planned community, you know? And people can commute right to Raleigh or right to Durham or Greensboro, actually, because it's kind of down and over. So anyway, so keep that in mind. Those are two that would be kind of offer you sort of that flexibility kind of thing that you're looking at. Because I'd love to see it. Because I love that idea. I think it is on trend and it is kind of a big need in the world in general. And so I think kind of, and I mean, I think that almost like pairs well with sort of your practice too, right? I mean, are you thinking that way too, right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we're actually launching in a couple of months, the Better app, right? I'm not that clever when it comes to like branding names. I'm like, well, I have the Better spot, I'll just do the Better. So the Better app is essentially like the LinkedIn of well tech, just like looking at the fact that there's no dedicated social professional network for holistic professionals. When I like look at folks that are like looking for jobs and they type in therapist, it's like the things that come up are like, this type of therapist, this type of thing. And it's like, no. Like, why isn't there just a space for folks to come and do the thing that they do for holistic practitioners, where people who are white collar have tons of platforms and spaces, people who are blue collar have tons of spaces for them. So I kind of built a addition, right? Just like an upsell to the Better spot, and built a digital community. And it's going to be, our MVP is going to be coming out in like a couple of months, which is exciting.
Damn,
so
that's crazy. Yeah, similar. I mean, not similar, but again, also on trend. Like that's what I love about also my job too. Like I obviously started with all these like negative thoughts and feelings, but I mean, I do have like happy thoughts too, which is, it's great to constantly see patterns, right? And so, I think it was, I mean, the concept used to be called unbundling, now it's not necessarily unbundling, but like LinkedIn is like the professional network for all professionals ever. But now it's actually, we are seeing, like, what about well tech? What about like medicine? What about mental health workers and others? And so I love that idea. So, I mean, I kind of just need to take a step back. Like, you're super entrepreneurial and you're just like doing all kinds of stuff. You're solving all these problems. You're running 3 projects, your practice, the Fountful and the Better spot. Obviously you're launching Better app. I guess how'd you even become this way? Right. I mean, like, you were an actor. I mean, you just obviously were just like, have so much like kind of I don't know, like diversity and like variety, versatility, I guess, in your experiences and your capabilities. But just what do you think sort of kind of has inspired all of this and given you kind of I don't know, I mean, I feel like confidence is a big thing that a lot of entrepreneurs maybe struggle with, and you're obviously no shortage of that. But
thank you. I mean, I would say I definitely, well, first of all, I grew up with a mom that's like overly educated. like she's the person who, came up to Chicago or whatever, grew up on the South Side. And she was definitely like, okay, I have this degree and that degree gets me this salary and into these doors, but I want this salary and I want to get into these doors. So I'm going to go and get more degrees and meet more people and build my network. And just watching her scaffold this infrastructure, where I was like, oh shit, like that's how you, oh wow. Like when she would, I'd be like 8 years old at like, she was in Chicago City Council. She's a contractor, she's a developer, she's all these things. And she would constantly find that people that she was introduced to weren't decision makers. They were middle people, right? They were gatekeepers. And so she's like, okay, interesting. Well, I'm going to go get that certification and then I don't have to talk to this person anymore. And then I can be directly in touch with these people who signed the checks. And I was like, oh, bet. So like looking at how she, learned what her strengths were, leaned on those strengths, and then supported those strengths with certifications and licensures. I was like, oh, okay, so that's how I have to get things done. So instead of just being a founder that's like, I'm a founder in well tech that's helping holistic practitioners, it's like, I'm a holistic practitioner that's also a founder in well tech, and now I have a shared experience and I am the audience that I'm serving. It's a necessity to be able to have a deeper and more connected kind of idea to the passion. And again, it all just came from equity and access. It all goes back to that, of just being like, how can I be the best person to solve this problem? I have to live the problem in order to really connect to it.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, okay. That's great. And so, and then you went from, yeah. I mean, but you shifted kind of to acting, right? Where you didn't just come right out of the gates, just being like, I'm doing business. Like my
Yeah,
mom was in business.
no. Yeah, so I was in acting. I was a childhood actor. I worked at all the big theaters in Chicago where I grew up, and then I got into NYU. And that's what I wanted to do. I was so singular. There was no variety in my life from ages 0 to 21. That's
Dang.
all I wanted to do was acting all the time. And then I learned the hard way in junior and senior year where I started to like have to have headshots and started to have to put things on tape for auditions. And then I was like, oh, wait, this is a business. This isn't just like art and fulfillment. Wait, I have to be set up on some imaginary like system of judgment and criticism that has there's no basis of there's no like rubric for getting a role, right? Either a director's like, yes, I vibe with that person and she's great for the role, or not. And I didn't like that. I wanted to know more about the business, and I wanted to get more into understanding the business and being able to navigate the business. And once I did, and I sat on the other side of the table, so to speak, I didn't like the business of entertainment. I didn't want to be in that. I wanted to have more of a position of power. And so I got into being an entrepreneur, and I was like, what can I build? What can I build? And then, disperse and allow other folks to feel seen and supported.
And so obviously from all the scar tissue built up from acting and being famous for all those years, you're like mental well-being. I'm already spending all my paycheck on these people to like just build me up to keep getting broken down. So I might as well be in that business.
Real time.
Every time, I mean, it's funny. Everyone goes through that, right? Like you get married, you're like, oh my God, I need to be in the wedding business, or like, oh, like buy a dog. Like I need to be in the pet care business, have a baby. Like, I need to do something in the baby business because you see all your money just going right out the freaking window.
Yeah.
Like I got
ineffectively.
Yeah. And so your money was ineffectively going out the window. Well, maybe not to the practitioners, but to like gas and driving and
it just didn't. The system didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense.
That's incredible. Like that's what an awesome journey. Like I wish I feel like I could have like 3 or 4 conversations with you and set that up so much better. Because of like kind of where you start and like what are like, do we all know you from like some like childhood TV show or like movie? Like are you famous? No. Are you famous? You are famous, obviously.
A lot of my friends are famous, but I am not. I'm the unfamous friend out of my group.
Okay.
No.
I'm sure you're famous and you're just being humble. So I'm gonna have to like really dig into that. Like, okay, roles. Okay, sweet. Like, damn, I knew that. So what you said, and that is a common theme too, like sort of being, and now you mentioned you're a parent, right? So like, the amount of people that have just drew strength, I guess, from seeing what their parents were doing and confidence, right? Like that is important. So, I mean, I think as people that are in our age range, I'm older than you, I'm 40 now. Gosh, that sucks. But
why?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's amazing. I'm about to be 40. Come on now.
I know. Yeah. I feel like I have good things to say about being 40. It's fine, because it's just like, it's just a decade, right? So you have to switch from being like, I was, like 30s to like 40s, right? But now I'm like really need to like, now I'm like, oh, I'm young for someone in their 40s, 40. Yeah. Or like, how do I make this? Okay. So another good quote though, is like, you overestimate what will get done in 1 year, but you underestimate what will get done in 10. And so that one's always been like, damn, I'm 40. Like I'm fucked. I'm not doing anything. And I'm like, wait, where was I when 30? And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I was just starting a separate business. I was just starting like the agency that I still kind of own now. And I just had like I had my first kid in the age of 30 and I've got 3 and I feel like, I'm like a vet of parenting and shit.
Yeah.
Like, but then before that 20, right? So you're like, well, damn,
I don't want to talk about my 20s. No, we're not. That's a whole 20, different podcast.
Like I was like 20. I was like, I don't even think I was even going to bars because I like didn't have a fake ID because I got stolen or lost or jacked or whatever. And I just didn't want to do it again because I was like, oh, I'm almost 21. I mean, I was like, 20 was the worst, but so I mean, I'm excited about this kind of decade too. But yeah, you've got a really awesome story. It's very inspiring. You're like, tell me about the bit. Like, are you raising money for these? Have you already sort of like thought through your revenue plan, or it's, I mean, some of these I can see working on kind of contract and cash flow, but others not. So are you kind of going like a fundraising route?
Yeah, so it took me a long time because I definitely, I read the glorified stories from like the NASDAQ and whatnot of like, the founder of Spanx, just like finally after all these years sharing the controlling stock of her company to a private equity firm, and just knowing that she bootstrapped it and knowing that like literally like the check is going to her. So I've always wanted to kind of get as far as I can without external capital, because I wholly believe in the phrase, not all money is good money. And, also the financial education that was necessary to become an entrepreneur that I feel like a lot of folks who aren't entrepreneurs take for granted. It's like, no, you need to understand money. You need to understand capital. You need to understand who has it, where to get it, all those kind of things. So I am going to be starting around. I am going to be doing a very early stage, early pre-baby seed round. To kind of get the tech off the ground. When it comes to, the real estate portion, like you pointed out, right? That's something that's going to be contractual and most likely a partnership and revenue share split with someone who has property, especially in opportunity zones. Like I'm looking at opportunity zones in Chicago, looking at opportunity zones in Memphis, looking at opportunity zones in Ohio. There's so many areas where my audience is existing and their clients are there and everyone's hands are raised and there's no one doing the work. So I don't think the raises are going to be all that hard, she says, apprehensively knocking on wood. But yeah. So I'm gonna get the private beta going. I'm gonna build some really attractive traction, and then probably do it Q2 or 3 of next year.
Sure. Yeah, that's good advice. And also, I mean, yeah, not all money is good money, and getting further down the road, as far down the road as you can. But also you don't always need, I mean, doing with less, or going without is fine too. Right. So, I mean, even if the business, are you positioning it as this is an investment into Madilynn Beck Enterprises, or specifically for the Better Spot, or
the Better Spot?
Yeah.
The Better Spot is the umbrella. I definitely have advisors on my board, and one of my corporate attorney advisors is like, you need to have 2 separate entities. And then I have the personal, like the actual attorney for our company is just like, no, you should definitely do it as an overarching umbrella, with that being a subsidiary. And when they invest in both. And so I'm getting a lot of conflicting kind of, little people on the shoulder type thing. So yeah, I'm still making up my mind on how the investment structure is going to work after that.
Yeah. That is stressful, because I feel like in a way that should just be a tactic, but sometimes not all attorneys, I don't know. It's like you have to like kind of cast out that play for them to run a lot of time. I just got off the phone with an attorney about kind of an opportunity that we're a part of where we need to raise money. But like, I'm kind of like, it was sort of a distressed deal in the first place, where we're only a part of it because the company ran out of money. And so we're like, all right, we'll convert to equity. We're opportunistic. We are looking to how do we invest into companies? And, but it's like, well, now they need more. So I'm like, well, I converted it just like what everyone else did, because I was just like, sure that I'll get involved and it'll turn nothing into something. But now I'm like, if I'm writing a check, but like, I have to give them the exact play to run. Like, here's what we're going to do. Here are the books. Here's what we're going to say. It's valued. Here's how we're going to structure it. And that's not the exact same as what you're saying, but like it's similar, because they also have a multi-market approach. So it's like, there needs to be not one entity, there needs to be a parent company, some entities. And then, it's like, well, what if we franchise? Like, well, we have to hit freaking $1 million of probably EBITDA.
There's
probably
things you have to
5 to 10 locations. So don't worry about it, dude. Like, why are you asking me? Like,
why are we
just
even
run
talking
the
about
play,
that?
right? Run the play, man. Don't change the plays in the huddle. That's from Any Given Sunday. Were you in that? I'm just kidding. Fun times. I can keep going. Do you have a hard stop, or because I want to respect your time?
No.
So you're in LA?
I moved from LA. We just bought a house in Palm Springs, so I'm about 2 hours southeast of Los Angeles.
Okay, that sounds fun. Is it nice there? That's like the desert, though, right? Isn't it kind of more deserty there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And is it Palm Springs, California, or is there like isn't there also Palm Springs,
California?
Yeah. Is there another Palm Springs? Like,
I don't know.
Is it like sit on the border of like that Nevada, or no?
No, we're 3 hours away from.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sweet. I totally know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I got married in California, actually, in Santa Barbara.
Sure.
Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like on a whim, but I mean, I didn't
That's
get
like
married on the
my
whim,
Oprah
but
retirement dream. My
Oprah was
retirement
there.
dream
Yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah. We saw
yeah.
Oprah's spot. Well, we didn't see. You can't see it. You just see like a gate. You know.
Yeah,
It's just
and
like
just tons of trees. But yeah, no, I mean, I love Santa Barbara. It's amazing.
yeah. At first, I was like, oh, there's a Bentley. It must be Oprah's. But then like 5 more drove by. I was like, oh, I guess everyone here has money. So
Yep.
it was fun. Yeah, yeah. It was a very aspirational trip. We're like, oh, but only if you've got your purpose and your why will you get there, right? Because if you're just doing it for that, then it's not really gonna happen. But I love this idea. I hope we can kind of collaborate on it kind of in the future, because I think I too sort of have I'm not a real estate developer, even though I just kind of set up all this stuff. But similar to you, I kind of like, well, I'm gonna buy my own building and kind of go through the learning lessons, and it's painful, and I'm like, I hate it. I was like, I'm never doing this again. But then I saw how much money was just flying out the door to other people. Right. So I'm like, wait a minute. A couple of years went by, and I was like, all right, I've sort of forgot all the bad parts and only remember the good, and said I want to do it again. But I do love kind of the how do we bring a systematic approach to even the kind of combination of operating businesses and real estate, because that's just sort of a secret formula. Like the developers were like, oh my gosh, if I get a tenant, like. It's like, wow, ridiculous. That's all you have to say, and you can just get hundreds of millions of dollars. Like we're doing shit so the hard way.
Right.
So I want to try to like level ourselves up and be like, okay, well, yes, why don't we like bring whether it's co-working or obviously the better spot sort of concepts, but have enough space to where those can be anchors that, kind of, raise up the profile of all the other folks that, and then eventually bring someone and have enough space to them where you can kind of capture big checks from a couple of folks that want to be located or co-located around there, and make it a successful project. So anyways, yeah, I'm down. I love that. And but 2 things. One is the one that I said, it's, I don't have to go into what it is, but it's concierge storage. So like part of it's, we're looking at like just kind of these old warehouses for creative adaptive reuse in markets where there's still some affordability, and specifically in opportunity zones. So I'm like, I don't know if there will be there for you yet, to where like there'll be the retail clientele, but like some markets there might be, like downtown Sanford, they have like 20,000 people, but yes, it will become sort of a thriving kind of suburb of the Triangle. I just don't know when, right? So I wouldn't like want to overpromise that to you, but others might be Triad, or like someplace right outside of Charlotte, or, Nashville, or, things like that. I mean, we're looking at Jacksonville, Florida. So,
nice.
And like, you kind of, I feel like the better spot could kind of be like a brewery, where it's like, it can kind of just go anywhere. And as long as it's a place where people will know they're going to eventually go. And it's sort of maybe kind of, they can see that this could be a trendy part of town, but it's enough of a destination to where you could anchor someplace. Just like what I'm thinking with the storage place, like it'll be some logistics people and some tech people. And hopefully they can anchor a project that allows us to maybe redevelop an area that wouldn't be redeveloped otherwise, which I think is interesting. So anyways, but enough about me. So yeah, I guess let's kind of move to the close. I mean, how do you actually, where are you at with the podcast? Is that an ongoing thing, or was that just a small series, or is that
I mean, the goal is to finish out with the first season being 10 episodes. I think I'm at 4 now. Okay. But yeah, just I basically it was on a schedule when I first started, and now I'm kind of just like, as I have conversations and meet interesting people that want to talk about what fundraising looks like for people of color, I'm like, cool, like what does that look like? What are your stories? Let's figure out a time to get on there and talk. So I have like another 6 to go. I have a couple folks that are lined up. Scheduling is always hella difficult when you're dealing with entrepreneurs and small business owners and every other facet of life, but looking to get our next episode done in post-production, hopefully out next week.
Sure. Okay, that's great. And how, like, I mean, you're in all these groups. What's your biggest like kind of platform or megaphone? Are you kind of putting it all through the podcast, or, obviously you're so busy. It's not like maybe you are posting a ton on social, but like, you're still in the operational mode, not necessarily like how to, here's how I did it mode. Yeah. But I want more people to kind of like sort of absorb kind of the energy and knowledge that you have. So what, like, is it just like, come see me if you're in the LA Palm Springs area, or like maybe follow Better Spot or whatever, or like how follow can you kind of
follow the Better Spot? Hit me up on, LinkedIn is like the it's kind of like the mecca of where I pour all of my business things into one. So, I talk about Foundful, I talk about the Better Spot, I talk about the podcast. That pretty much is the only platform where I openly talk about all those things and kind of put out little seeds. Obviously, each company has its own company page, but then you're not going to get everything else. So,
right.
my personal socials are private because I'm very protective of my kids, and the internet is forever. So none of my personal accounts are public, but yeah, everything is on IG and Twitter and Facebook. I've got all the socials and they're all popping off. But if you want to get kind of like a one-stop shop for everything that I'm got my hands in, LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And how do you see your sort of role? I mean, obviously you're advocating for, access and equity. You're talking about the struggles of fundraising while Black, or while being a person of color. Well, it's called Fundraising While Black. Whew, good thing I didn't mess that one up. But obviously, like, you're doing it and you're like in an incredible position to like lead and encourage and inspire others by like showing, and not only like doing it firsthand, but like you're in a great position to have success with it because you've got so much experience. Like, I'm asking you, how do you see your role? Because part of it's like, you're obviously the like spokesperson. You're like super, charismatic. You've got great ideas. It's on trend, and you're willing to share and talk about it. But on the other hand, like, do you ever feel like you might, it's almost like you're kind of intimidating too, right? So, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people, maybe not intimidating, but like, shit, you like have all these careers, like you went and got this other degree to like learn this industry, you're starting businesses, you're like, I'm launching an app, I've got like a real estate venture. If I wasn't equally as ADD or like, well, I'm not saying you're ADD, but if I wasn't equally as like sort of multifaceted, whatever, with my project approach, but also it comes with like experience too. We don't talk about age, what we already did, but like, I don't know if I would have, like, I could see people being like, that is someone that I have, they're on a whole nother level. Right. So when they're saying, I'm doing this and, I want to encourage you to do the same, like it might feel like that disconnect, right? Like, does that make sense? Do you ever think about that? And how do you kind of bridge the gap between,
I do think about it. I think that people don't give themselves enough credit, like first and foremost, right? Like when folks look at, so I'm, like I said, I'm in a bunch of different groups and people will talk about how they're struggling in this one area, right? And how they need to really grow in this one area. So I'll say it's their business, right? If it's, for instance, there's a group that I'm a part of called I Fund Women. And it's a platform for fundraising for women entrepreneurs. And there's a Slack channel for that and a community for that. So we'll be in there and we'll be talking. People don't realize how many things that they're doing that they, have depth in. They may not have certifications or licensures in those things, but they have years of lived experience in them. So, I don't know how to, I'm a parent and I've got this product for kids, but I'm struggling with raising money for it because I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, who are you talking to about it? You're a parent and you're a product designer for a kids thing. Why don't you talk to other parents? Why don't you like just start looking at like the honeycomb effect of all the different things that that make up your experience and start really being productive on how you can actualize the different places within them. Like you're doing a bunch of stuff too, you're doing all the things and and if you're doing too much and the things that don't fulfill you, you take them off your plate.
That's right. Yeah. I've kind of made a goal, maybe it's not the end of this year, but I'm willing to attribute some of this to COVID. Like, I probably had 20 more projects when that started, thinking about helping the world, saving the world, but also adapting and launching something that addresses kind of new world, whether it's kind of remote monitoring, censoring, to like just anything. And it just felt like a time to like get inspired. But like, obviously that leads to a lot of sort of distractions and a lot of paths. And I've shut a lot of them down because I'm just like, okay, it's not now. It just wasn't happening. And I got to keep that same sort of be vigilant about kind of shutting things down and saying no, even if it's golf. That's sad. I had a moment where I was like, I need to either get out there, back to having fun with it, where it's social, and I kind of have people interaction and go with the kids and family.
Don't have it be a chore. Don't have it be a chore.
Quitting just felt bad. But you can't throw good money after bad though, because it's kind of like you've already put the money in, you've got all this gear, you've been paying and stuff. But anyways, so, well, that's great. Yeah, no, that's a great sort of like, I don't know, like parting thought or whatever, which is, even if, look inside, look at yourself, right? If you're like kind of listening to others or listening to you, Madilynn, kind of talk about what you're doing and in hopes of, that's why we experience you. That's why you're in these groups. You chat, you share, like kind of maybe someone draws some kind of knowledge or insight.
Something,
And it's not telling people what to do. Obviously, as like coaching and all that stuff, you can't tell someone to do, or you should do this. It's very like judgmental. It's kind of dumb. Like people just don't receive it well. Like, especially as an entrepreneur like us, we're know-it-alls, right? So if you're like, oh, you should go do this, you're like, no matter what it is, it's like, nope.
Even if you want to do it just because someone else said to do it, you'll be like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah. No, hell no. Do the opposite 10 times harder, but I'm going to do that. But when you just hear someone say what they did, how they solved a problem. So anyway, that's why I like this. And I think, as people listen to your experiences, and I like that part about just sort of give yourself credit, right? Just look in the mirror and kind of like really own that and use that as a source of strength and power as you kind of go off and do your pursuits, whether it's in, entrepreneurship, like you've, kind of chosen, or just, business, art, entertainment, whatever. Maybe not entertainment if you listen to Madilynn talk, but it'll be too scarring to spend too much money on, well-being afterwards.
Some people are masochists. Go out there and do it.
Yeah. You just love the pain. Entrepreneurship does have a similar kind of twist though, right? So I mean, you didn't go like too far, right? I mean,
I didn't, but at least it's a bit more quantifiable, right? Okay, like there is no score for like how good an accent is or how close someone looks to an imaginary character.
Oh, true. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a whole nother. Yeah. All right. Well, which imaginary character do you think you look closest to? Or how do you is that on your that should have been on your profile? Like, I am the best at...
Well, I'll tell you this one short story. There's actually a play that was written with a Black female cop named Madilynn Beck. Damn. True story. I auditioned for the part. I was like, I'm totally going to get this. And I did not. So that's just the moral of the story right there.
Wow. That's a good story. Well, we face that too in the kind of the other entrepreneur. I mean, I remember going in for projects where it's like, oh, we're looking to find a partner of a company with, 20 to 30 people, not too big, not too small.
Right. And you're
entrepreneurs.
Like,
that's me. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. We're like the only person that fits this profile if you're trying to find a partner in this region or whatever. And they're like, oh, no, we just didn't do it. You're like, how was that even possible that I didn't win that project? Like, it just literally was unfathomable, but it just happens. So, okay, well, let's break. I mean, you're kind of, really like my idol now. I'm just going to keep following this. I just love what you're doing. And I'm so fascinated because you also have these other just awesome life experiences. I mean, living in New York, being in entertainment, living in LA, that's just is also fascinating to me. Like, I've lived in big cities before, but kind of just early on, I kind of gravitated towards coming back to a place where I could have more of an impact, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna have an impact, but it was also just you can actually know people, sometime I lived in New York for a little bit, but then Atlanta and then DC. And it's just kind of, it felt like they're soulless in ways, right? You're like, man, there's no identity to people. It's just there's humans just passing all over the place. Yeah. And you can build small communities, and that's what I was kind of doing. But I was young, and so I was like, well, if I go back to this area, I might know people. I'll be plugged into my alma maters here. Yeah. And it actually has
have a fear. Yeah. I have a fear of doing what you're describing because we're about to do that. I'm about to move back to the outskirts of Chicagoland. So I've always lived in the city. I'm not moving back to the city. We're going to move to an area that's better for our children and bigger yards. And I'm scared shitless. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I do. I mean, I would have not, I was thriving in some ways in big cities, but it's so hard to make it work financially. It's just, so you're like, damn,
it's exhausting. Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh, what if I would have stuck it out? Where would I have been? There's bigger markets, bigger communities, bigger ideas.
Yeah.
It's great. Going to a fundraiser for the mayoral candidate and seeing 9 other business owners, but there's only 15 people there.
Right.
And by all measures, that was a very VIP meeting that I was at, and it was cool. And it was but I was like, it's not. Is it though? Relative to what, right?
Right.
So I think about that too, but you're obviously doing it and you're making it, and good luck. When's the move? I saw that actually you posted you're looking for a realtor at one point.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I've had realtor nightmares. So we're looking to move. I mean, the hope is to move before snowfall. So we've given up the home search for real estate. Yeah. It's like yesterday.
Yeah.
I know. So now we're just going to rent. We're just going to get a little spot and rent for 6 months or so and wait till everything thaws out and then pick it up again next year. We're looking to move ASAP.
Yeah. I grew up in Indianapolis, so it wasn't quite as bad, nice. But we would have some of our soccer state championships would be in the snow, and it was before Halloween, and it'd be like, what? That's weird.
Yep.
Why is it? And here, today, I think the high is 79 here in Durham.
Oh, really?
It's dude, Halloween's in 10 days.
Yeah, but when we lived in Charlotte for that little bit of time, it was nice. It was really, there was a lot of rain when we were there.
Yeah. It's
like a lot of storms.
Yeah, obviously there's shit's just going crazy, right? It's like, but it used to be like each year was something different. It was too dry, it was too wet, it was too hot, it was too cold, it was too long, it was cold. It was like, and so all my plants just die every year. It's the moral of that story. I was replaced thousands going down I need to be in the plate, or I should get a condo downtown. But the kids won't like that. But,
or get like a little greenhouse thingy to stick all your plants
in. But then, but you want the yard and interest, like, oh, there's blooms in the spring. But I don't really have a green thumb, so someone have to manage that.
They're gonna die anyway, then. So don't blame the weather. What do you do? Blame them if you don't have a green?
No, I mean, they were supposed to. Well, I have like they're watered and fertilized, and they're supposed to just live. That's plants have existed for like billions of years in their natural habitat. Go to your little home, plant. Well, this is great. I want to keep in touch. I'll follow the Better Spot, and I encourage everyone to do the same. And obviously, if there's anything I can do, for you, or if you like are legitimately looking around and want to talk about what I was talking about with our space or others, even as kind of a template or a prototype, even like a prototypical convo, right? Even if you're like, I'm never going to do it, but it's just sort of thinking through it. I like that. It was sort of inspiring to me too, of how to think about bringing the right kind of mixture of kind of operations into something that can pull in, be anchors and be destinations. And I mentioned the markets that I'm also kind of looking at too. So there's obviously going to be some overlap if you are thinking.
No, I heard a couple markets where I was like, post-it note in the brain.
That's right. Yeah. Chicago is like very cold. So, I don't know if I want to go back there. Actually, my wife went to grad school at Northwestern. So between Indy growing up there and then kind of the 2.5 years or so she was there, I like Chicago. I love it.
I think it's a great middle market.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah. It's just so cold. It's just like very cold. And I mean, like almost like, Indy, the problem with Indy was like, it's really cold in the winter and really hot in the summer. And you're just kind of like, what am I getting out of this? I'm not like on the lake, even Chicago, you're like on the lake or, like I'm in a big city. It's just like now Indy's gotten a lot better as a kind of second-ish tier market. But back then it was like, still just like nothing. It was just like, this is no point to like suffer through this. Why not get some benefit? Right.
Right.
Carolina here, it's like, it gets still snow a little bit, but it's really not. It's usually, you can.
No, it's really temperate climate.
Shorts. Yeah. All day long. But it's also still hot in the summer, but like, it's, it's not like hot and cold. Anyway, Chicago, it's great. Good luck with that move and good luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you.
And I look forward to kind of, just continuing to follow along and track your progress towards happiness and fulfillment.
I'm already living it. I'm already doing it.
I know. I know, because it wasn't towards success, right? Because that's too, one single viewed, right? It's more like towards fulfilling, towards living, I guess, you're,
providing equity and access for everyone else. There you go.
That's right. Yeah, living it out. So good. Well, thank you for doing this. And like I said, if I can do anything, let me know.
I'm going to hit you up. Yeah.
Yeah, please do.